Right now, let us know in the comments. And now let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The architect, Bryant Novick, stared at the lines of code on his screen, his eyes burning from working for 18 hours straight. His revolutionary blockchain protocol, which he called Prometheus, was finally taking shape after 3 years of relentless development. At the age of 38, he was betting everything on this technology that could decentralize the entire financial system while making transactions untraceable. The voice of his daughter Abby, who was 9 years old at the time, pulled him away from his work. Digital trance, she stood in the doorway of his home office, clutching her science project materials. Bryant glanced at his watch. 11:20 p.m. He'd completely forgotten about helping with her volcano. "I'm so sorry, Pumpkin." He rubbed his bloodshot eyes. "Let me save this, and I'll help you right now." "Mom already did it," Abby mumbled, disappointed. "She said not to bother you because you're too busy making money that doesn't exist." The comment stumped Meredith. His wife of 12 years had grown increasingly bitter about his work. She'd married him when he was climbing the corporate ladder at Silverstream Technologies with a comfortable 6-figure salary, and his decision 3 years ago to quit and pursue his blockchain vision had been a constant source of tension. "Is your mother still awake?" Brian asked her as she went out with her friends from the country club once more. Abby looked down, and she said that she needed adult conversation. Bryant felt the familiar nod in his stomach tighten around his stomach. These girls' nights had become more frequent recently, and last week he found a receipt for a $300 dinner at Oriole in her purse, which was significantly more extravagant than a casual night out. "Come here," he said, opening his arms, and Abby rushed into them. "I promise I'm going to make this all worth it. One day, very soon, people will understand what I've been building." Later that night, Bryant heard Meredith stumble in around 2 a.m. Smelling of expensive whiskey and wearing a dress he didn't recognize. When she slipped into bed, he pretended to be asleep too, exhausted for another argument. The next morning over coffee, Bryant tried to bridge the growing gap between them. "I made a breakthrough yesterday," he said. "The protocol's alpha test worked perfectly. We're months ahead of schedule." Meredith looked up from her phone with practiced disinterest. At 36, she still turned heads with her polished beauty maintained through rigorous fitness regimens and cosmetic treatments Bryant could barely afford. "That's nice," she said flatly. "Did you remember we have the Sandersons charity gala tomorrow night?" "I can't go," Bryant said. "The investor meeting with Delta Venture was moved up. This could be our funding breakthrough." "Perfect, Meredith. Old ladies, while you stand there looking like you haven't slept in weeks. This isn't just crypto, Meredith. If Prometheus works, if she cut him off 3 years of, if Bryant." "Meanwhile, Abby barely knows her father. I'm using credit cards to maintain appearances, and you're chasing digital fairy gold." What Meredith didn't understand or refused to was that Bryant wasn't creating just another cryptocurrency. Prometheus was designed to be unhackable, untraceable, and capable of processing transactions in milliseconds. If successful, it would revolutionize everything from banking to international trade. 6 more months, Bryant promised. "That's all I need." "You said that 6 months ago," Meredith replied coldly, "and 6 months before that." The doorbell interrupted their standoff. Bryant opened the door to find his mentor and former professor Dr. Franklin Webb standing there with a knowing smile. "Am I interrupting?" "I brought bagels," said the silver-haired academic who had first introduced Bryant to blockchain technology during his graduate studies. Franklin. Meredith's demeanor shifted instantly to charm mode. "What a lovely surprise. Come in over breakfast." Franklin updated them on his connections at MIT's digital currency initiative. "They're working on similar protocols, but nothing as elegant as Prometheus." "Bryant, your approach to the consensus mechanism is completely revolutionary." Bryant noticed Meredith's expression change slightly at this external validation. For years, she'd assumed his work was a pipe dream because none of their social circle understood it. "The Sanderson Foundation is looking to diversify their investment portfolio into blockchain," Franklin mentioned casually. "They're hoping to find the next big innovation before it explodes." Meredith's eyebrows rose. The Sandersons were Boston old money pillars of the society. She desperately wanted to join Bryant's presenting to potential investors tomorrow night, she said quickly. "But perhaps the weekend after. I'll make the introduction," Franklin promised. "They'll be impressed." After Franklin left, Meredith was uncharacteristically thoughtful. "Maybe I've been too hard on you," she admitted. "But you have to understand how difficult this has been." Bryant embraced a relief washing over him. "It's almost over. Everything's about to change." What Bryant couldn't know was how prophetic those words would prove, but not in the way he imagined. Later that week at the charity gala Meredith attended alone. She would meet a man who would set in motion the complete unraveling of their lives. His name was Dorian Frost, and he would take particular interest when Meredith mentioned her husband's blockchain project. Chapter 2. The Interloper. The Delta Venture meeting had been a disaster. The investors, a group of traditional finance types, couldn't grasp Bryant's vision for Prometheus. "So it's like Bitcoin?" one had asked dismissively. "No, it's an entirely different," Bryant had tried to explain before being cut off. "We've seen crypto come and go. What makes yours special?" By the time Bryant returned home exhausted and defeated, Meredith was already back from the gala, humming as she removed her earrings in their bedroom. "How was your meeting?" she asked with unusual interest. "They didn't get it," Bryant sighed. "How was the gala?" Meredith's eyes lit up. "Actually, I met someone you should talk to, Dorian Frost. He runs Crescent Capital Partners and specifically invests in blockchain technology." Bryant perked up. "Really? Did you tell him about Prometheus?" "Just the basics," she smiled. "He was fascinated. He wants to meet you." 3 days later, Bryant sat across from Dorian Frost at an upscale restaurant downtown. Frost was everything Bryant wasn't: polished, charismatic, with an ease that came from old money and elite schools. At 45, he exuded success from his tailored suit to his confident smile. "Meredith described your project quite passionately," Frost said, swirling his Bordeaux, "though I suspect she didn't quite grasp the technical details." "She tries," Bryant said defensively. "Of course." Frost nodded sympathetically. "It must be difficult having a vision others can't see. Tell me about Prometheus." Unlike the Delta venture investors, Frost asked insightful questions that showed genuine understanding. By dessert, Bryant felt he'd finally found someone who recognized Prometheus's potential. "I'd like my technical team to review your work," Frost said. "If it's as groundbreaking as it sounds, Crescent could offer substantial backing." Over the next weeks, Frost became a fixture in their lives. He invited the Noviks to exclusive events, sent gifts for Abby, and arranged for Bryant to pitch to serious tech investors. Meredith bloomed under his attention, dressing more expensively and laughing more freely than she had in years. Bryant was too preoccupied with finalizing Prometheus to notice the subtle shifts: Meredith's lingering glances at Frost, their private jokes, the way she touched her hair when he entered a room. He didn't see the text messages or the accidental meetings when Bryant was working. Franklin Webb noticed, however, after observing Meredith and Frost at a tech conference reception. He pulled Bryant aside. "How much does Frost know about your algorithms?" he asked sharply. "The general architecture." Bryant replied, "Nothing proprietary." "What? Something feels off." Franklin frowned. "I checked his background. Crescent Capital has a pattern of investing in startups, gaining access to their IP, then abandoning them after filing competing patents." "Dorian wouldn't do that," Bryant said. "He gets the vision. Just be careful what you share," Franklin warned, "and maybe pay more attention to anything." She was saying softly. "He is completely focused on the launch." "Yes, I've seen the documents, but they are password protected." "I know what's at stake." Bryant froze, his heart pounding. He backed away silently, his mind racing. In his home office, he checked his security logs, and he discovered that someone had attempted to access his protected files from Meredith's laptop the following morning. Instead of confronting her, Bryant set a trap. He created a folder labeled Prometheus_final algorithms, including altered code that would appear in the documents legitimate to non-experts but would catastrophically fail if implemented. He deliberately mentioned the folder to Meredith over dinner. 3 years of work finally compiled in one place. He said the patent attorney needs it by Tuesday. That night, he installed a keystroke logger on their home network and went to bed early, claiming exhaustion. At 1:23 a.m., his phone alerted him the honeypot folder had been accessed and copied to a USB drive. Bryant lay in the darkness beside his sleeping wife, a cold clarity washing over him. The woman he'd loved for 12 years, the mother of his child, had betrayed him in the most fundamental way. Instead of confrontation, he chose calculation. He would let the trap play out while accelerating his real work on Prometheus. The betrayal crystallized something in him. A ruthless would not only protect his work but would eventually make Meredith and Frost pay dearly for their treachery. "You seem different," Meredith commented over breakfast, studying his face. Bryant smiled pleasantly. "Just excited. Things are finally coming together." She had no idea how true that statement was, or that the man sitting across from her had fundamentally changed overnight. The old Bryant, trusting, somewhat naive, consumed by his vision, had died in the darkness. What remained was something far more dangerous, a brilliant mind fueled by betrayal. Chapter 3: The Deception. Over the next 2 months, Bryant played an elaborate charade. On the surface, he continued working feverishly on Prometheus. While growing increasingly distracted and despondent, he deliberately left financial statements showing dwindling resources around the house and started forgetting important social events. "Mom says you're having a breakdown," Abby said one evening as Bryant taught her chess in his office, the one place he was certain wasn't bugged by Frost's people. "What do you?" Bryant asked carefully. "What do you think?" Abby carefully studied the board before moving her knight. "I think you're playing a long game like in chess," Bryant said, smiling at his daughter's perceptiveness. "Sometimes, Pumpkin, when people think you're losing, it gives you an advantage they don't expect." Behind the scenes, Bryant had secretly completed the actual Prometheus protocol, storing the authentic code on servers that only he could access. The version that he worked on at home was an elaborate decoy that was functional enough to appear legitimate, but it lacked the revolutionary. While this was going on, he hired a private investigator to document Meredith's affair with Frost. The evidence quickly accumulated. including hotel rendezvous, intimate dinners, and explicit text messages discussing their plans for Brian's technology and money. The most painful discovery was that Meredith had involved Abby in their schemes. The photographs taken by the investigator showed Frost taking Abby out for ice cream, buying her expensive gifts, and gradually positioning himself as a father figure. In several photos, Abby looked like she was being taken by Frost. Bryant muttered, "He's manipulating my daughter," as he stared at the images. "There's more," the investigator said, grimly sliding across divorce papers that had already been drafted in Meredith's name. "They're planning something soon," the investigator said, grimly sliding across the papers. "The lawyer is Huntington. She's known for aggressive settlements that leave spouses with nothing." Father's Day fell on a Sunday in the middle of June, the evening before Bryant received a text from Franklin Frost. Franklin Frost met with Chinese investors claiming proprietary blockchain technology moving forward. Timeline up. Bryant responded, "Proceeding as planned, standby." That night he securely uploaded the real Prometheus protocol to Franklin's server with specific instructions: launch only if you receive my signal or if I'm incapacitated for more than 72 hours. The next morning Abby bounced into their bedroom carrying a tray with burnt toast and coffee. "Happy Father's Day, Daddy," she exclaimed. "We've got a super special surprise for you." Meredith appeared looking nervous but determined. "We've been planning this for weeks, haven't we, sweetie?" Bryant noted the strain in her smile, the way she avoided his eyes. He'd expected something today, but played along with practiced obliviousness. "What's my surprise?" As he seemed to be excited, he said, "You have to be blindfolded." Abby laughed and produced a silk tie before asking, "Is this something that is required?" Bryant asked, feigning reluctance. "No peeking," Meredith insisted, tying it around his eyes. "It's tradition for big surprises." Bryant felt himself being guided downstairs and into their car. The drive lasted approximately 20 minutes before they stopped. "Almost there," Meredith said, her voice tight, as she led him into a building and down a hallway. When the blindfold came off, Bryant found himself in an elegantly appointed office facing a stern-looking woman behind a mahogany desk. Dorian Frost sat in a corner chair, attempting to look solemn but failing to hide the triumph in his eyes. "Mr. Novick," the woman said professionally, "I'm Valerie Huntington, your wife. Felt this setting might help keep things civil." On the desk lay a stack of documents, divorce papers demanding 75% of all assets and intellectual property, full custody of Abby and their house. "Sign these, and we can all move on," Meredith said coldly. "Dorian has kindly offered to mediate." Bryant looked at his daughter, who stood confused by the door, clearly not understanding what was happening. He saw the moment she realized this wasn't a happy surprise, her face crumpling in betrayal. "You told me we were giving Daddy a special day," Abby whispered. "Grown-up business, sweetie." Meredith dismissed her. "Wait in the hall." As Abby left, tears streaming down her face, something hardened permanently in Bryant. He turned to Huntington with surprising calm. "May I review these documents?" During the course of 2 hours, Bryant studied each page with great attention to detail, while Meredith became increasingly irritated and Frost checked his watch multiple times. Finally Bryant looked up. "And if I don't sign, we go to court," Huntington replied, "where evidence of your mental instability, financial mismanagement, and parental neglect will be presented." Bryant nodded thoughtfully. "I see." With deliberate slowness, he signed every page, his expression unreadable. Meredith didn't notice the slight smile that flickered across his face when he reached page 17, the intellectual property transfer. "Congratulations on your freedom, Meredith," Bryant said quietly as he stood to leave. "I hope it." In the hallway, he kneeled down in front of Abby, who was crying, and asked, "Did you know about this? It brings you everything you deserve." He asked gently, "Mom said we were surprising you with a special Father's Day." She sobbed. "She said the blindfold was part of the fun." "Listen carefully," Bryant whispered, wiping her tears. "Sometimes things aren't what they seem, no matter what happens next. Remember, I love you more than anything in this world." As Bryant walked away, Frost emerged from the office with a triumphant smile. "No hard feelings, right? Business is business." Bryant looked at him with such cold intensity that Frost's smile faltered. "You know what the ancient Greeks said about Prometheus?" Bryant asked quietly. "He wasn't just punished for stealing fire, he was punished for giving power to those who didn't understand its consequences." With that cryptic statement, Bryant walked out, leaving his soon-to-be ex-wife and her lover. Chapter 4: The Fallout. The week following the divorce ambush was precisely orchestrated chaos. Bryant moved into a modest apartment across town, while Meredith and Frost celebrated their victory with a weekend in the Hamptons. Photos of them on Frost yet circulated among their social circle, cementing Bryant's humiliation. What no one saw was Bryant in a secure basement facility at MIT working furiously with Franklin Webb to launch the authentic Prometheus protocol, while Frost's technical team struggled with the sabotaged code. Bryant activated the final version on a protected network, They'll realize soon that the code they stole is fundamentally flawed, Franklin observed as they monitored the deployment. By then it won't matter. Bryant replied, eyes fixed on the screens showing transaction processing speeds that shattered all existing records. Prometheus wasn't merely a new cryptocurrency, it was an entirely new framework for digital value exchange with military-grade security protocols, while Bitcoin processed 7 transactions per second. Prometheus handled over 10,000 while maintaining perfect anonymity. On day 6 after the divorce, Abby called Bryant in tears. "Mom's changing all the locks," she sobbed. "She says, I can't see you until the custody hearing." "Did you secure what I asked for?" Bryant asked calmly. "Yes," Abby whispered. "I put your backup drives and the papers from your safe in the hollow tree like you showed me." "Good girl," Bryant said. "Remember our chess lessons? This is just the opening game." That night Bryant retrieved the hidden materials, including evidence of Meredith's affair, financial documentation, and most importantly proof that his intellectual property had been developed years before meeting Frost. The next morning, he received a call from Sullivan Gardner, his divorce attorney. They filed an emergency motion CL. "Similar to your work, right on schedule," Bryant noted calmly. "That you don't seem surprised." Sullivan observed. "That I'm not." Bryant responded by filing our countermotion immediately with Exhibits A through F. The exhibits contain devastating evidence: Meredith's documented affair, her attempts to access Bryant's secured files, and most damaging, Frost's pattern of intellectual property theft from previous startups. By the end of the week, the legal momentum had dramatically shifted. The judge, who had initially been sympathetic to Meredith's claims, could now view the case in a different light. With open skepticism, Bryant's apparent cooperation signing the divorce papers without contest had created the impression of a man with nothing to hide. Meanwhile, Abby's court-appointed advocate reported the child's distress at being used in the Father's Day deception, further damaging Meredith's custody position. 10 days after the divorce ambush, Bryant sat alone in his apartment monitoring cryptocurrency exchanges worldwide as Prometheus quietly went live. Unlike typical crypto launches with flashy marketing, Prometheus was introduced through trusted channels to specific high-value users seeking absolute transaction privacy. While Frost pursued patents for the flawed technology, the real Prometheus began processing millions in transactions, its value climbing steadily without drawing attention from mainstream financial media. Bryant's phone rang. "Meredith, the first time since the divorce. We need to talk," she said without preamble. "Dorian's team says there are problems with the code." "What a surprise," Bryant replied flatly. "Don't be childish." She snapped. "We're offering $50,000 for consultation services to fix the issues." Bryant laughed softly. "$50,000 for 3 years of work? Your boyfriend must be getting desperate." "$100,000, she countered quickly. "Goodbye, Meredith." 2 days later, the offer had risen to $500,000. Bryant ignored each call, focused instead on Prometheus's growth and the careful documentation of Frost's increasingly frantic attempts to salvage the stolen code, while Frost's technical team floundered. The authentic Prometheus protocol gained traction in exclusive financial circles, its perfect transaction record and unprecedented security features attracting serious attention from privacy-focused investors. 18 days after the divorce, Bryant received an unexpected visitor at his apartment. Abby, who had slipped away during a shopping trip with her mother. "Mom and Dorian fight all the time now," she reported, sitting cross-legged on his couch. "He keeps saying, 'You sabotaged something.' And she says, 'He promised he checked the code before.'" Bryant listened carefully, asking strategic questions that Abby answered with the directness of a child not understanding the full implications. "He has people watching our house," she added. "I saw them in a car outside." Bryant's expression hardened. "Has he threatened you in any way?" "No, but Abby hesitated yesterday. He said, 'If you wouldn't help fix the problems, they might need to convince you another way.'" Bryant took photos of a bruise on Abby's arm where Frost had grabbed her during an argument with Meredith and immediately called his attorney. "We need an emergency custody hearing." He insisted and file for a restraining order against Frost. The next day, the cryptocurrency world woke to news of a mysterious new protocol showing transaction volumes that dwarfed established network speculation about the creator of Prometheus, spread through financial channels with particular interest from Chinese investors who had recently been approached by Frost with promises of revolutionary technology. 23 days after the divorce, Bryant sat in court as temporary custody of Abby was transferred to him following the revelation of the bruising incident and Abby's testimony about the hostile environment. Meredith, disheveled and clearly stressed, approached Bryant in the courthouse hallway. "What have you done?" she hissed. "Dorian says the Prometheus code is completely worthless. His investors are threatening legal action." "How unfortunate," Bryant replied without emotion. "Perhaps you should have verified what you were stealing before you stole it." "We're ruined," she said, her voice breaking. "The house is mortgaged to fund development. Dorian's investors want their money back, and now I've lost Abby too." For a moment Bryant almost felt pity, then he remembered the Father's Day ambush, the months of betrayal, the manipulation of his daughter. Chess lesson number 1, he said quietly. Never assume you understand the game your opponent is playing. As he walked away with Abby's hand in his, Bryant received a text from Franklin. Prometheus just crossed 1 billion in transaction volume. Time to go public. Bryant smiled down at his daughter. How would you like to see your dad's work finally pay off? Will it make you happy again? She asked. I'm already happy, he said, squeezing her hand. I have what matters most. What he didn't say was that his happiness now coexisted with something darker, a cold determination to see his betrayers face the full consequences of their actions. The real game was just beginning. Chapter 5. The Ascension. Bryant chose an unassuming name for his corporate entity, Promethean Systems. He established it using a complex web of LLCs that obscured his direct ownership while maintaining absolute control from a converted warehouse space that served as both office and temporary home for him and Abby. He began building his empire. Why are we living here instead of getting a nice house? Abby asked one evening doing homework at a folding table while Bryant monitored international crypto exchanges. What does chess teach us about appearing weak when you're strong? Bryant countered. Make your opponent underestimate you, she replied promptly. Exactly right. Now everyone thinks your dad is a broken man who lost everything. In reality, Bryant's position strengthened daily. Prometheus's underlying protocol processed over $3 billion in transactions in its first month, generating substantial mining fees that flowed through untraceable channels back to Promethean Systems. Meanwhile, Frost faced mounting disasters. The Chinese investors who had fronted $20 million for the revolutionary blockchain technology discovered the code was fundamentally flawed. Their subsequent lawsuit named both Frost and Meredith, freezing their assets pending resolution. Meredith, now living in Frost's downtown penthouse, faced her own crisis when the divorce court appointed a forensic accountant who discovered she had diverted household funds to private accounts for months before the divorce. Bryant tracked these developments through his attorney while methodically executing Phase 2 of his plan, legitimizing Prometheus for mainstream adoption. 45 days after the divorce, Bryant arranged a meeting with Sylvia Torres, CEO of Nexus Pay, a digital payment processor that was struggling against larger competitors. Bryant demonstrated the capabilities of Prometheus in a secure conference room. Torres asked incredulously how many transactions per second is possible with the current implementation. Bryant responded with the potential to scale to 50,000, and the security protocol was quantum-resistant encryption with perfect forward secrecy, which is essentially unhackable with current technology. Torres studied him carefully. Why come to Nexus Pay with this technology? Any major player would give you billions, because you'll give me something more valuable than money. Bryant explained. Complete anonymity. While we scale, the major players would want their branding, their control. I need a partner willing to follow my implementation timeline precisely. The deal they struck would later be recognized as one of the most lopsided in financial technology history. Nexus Pay received non-exclusive implementation rights to Prometheus in exchange for 30% of transaction fees and a critical clause. Bryant's identity would remain completely confidential with institutional backing secured. Prometheus began its controlled expansion. Nexus Bay stock surged 400% in 2 weeks as they announced a revolutionary new processing system that protected user privacy while drastically reducing transaction costs. 60 days after the divorce, Franklin Webb visited the warehouse headquarters with news from academic circles. MIT wants to give you the Pioneer in Digital Economics Award. Your protocol has been analyzed by their cryptography team, and they are calling it the most significant advancement since Bitcoin, he announced. Decline politely. Bryant instructed that the time is not yet appropriate for public recognition. Instead, Bryant focused on establishing the infrastructure that would ultimately serve his revenge. He created a specialized team consisting of young, brilliant cryptographers and systems engineers who were sworn to secrecy and compensated with Prometheus tokens that are now worth millions. Your mission, he told them, is to create perfect financial transparency where anonymity currently exists. This seemingly paradoxical goal would become the foundation of what his team called Project Nemesis, a specialized application of Prometheus technology that could trace and expose hidden financial transactions without being detected. 70 days after the divorce, Bryant received intelligence that Frost had leveraged his remaining assets to short Nexus Pay stock. Believing the surge was a temporary bubble, the irony wasn't lost on Bryant. Frost was now financially betting against the very technology he had tried to steal. While Prometheus flourished, Bryant maintained his modest lifestyle with Abby now attending a new school where she was thriving away from the toxic environment of her mother's home. The custody arrangement allowed Meredith's supervised visitation, which she increasingly canceled as her financial and legal troubles mounted. Does Mom not want to see me anymore? Abby asked after the third consecutive cancellation. Your mother is going through a difficult time, Bryant answered carefully. Some people find it difficult to confront those they have wronged. 85 days after the divorce, the world of finance was shaken by an article published by Bloomberg that examined the meteoric rise of the Prometheus protocol and speculated about its unknown creator. The article estimated that the unknown developers held approximately $3 in the cryptocurrency, $7 billion, making them one of the wealthiest individuals in cryptocurrency. The day after publication, Meredith called Bryant for the first time in weeks. "I know what you've done," she said, her voice a mixture of anger and desperation. "The real Prometheus was never in our home system, was it? You're only now figuring that out." Bryant replied, "Disappointing. Dorian is ruined," she continued. "The investor lawsuit's legal fees were selling the penthouse. He blames me for not getting better access to your work. How tragic." Bryant responded without inflection, "I assume that's why you've been canceling visitations with Abby." "I can't face her," Meredith admitted, her voice breaking. "Not like this. Broke, being evicted with legal troubles. This isn't the life I wanted. Choices have consequences, Meredith. You chose schemes. I made a terrible mistake," she whispered. "Is there any way we could know?" Bryant interrupted with finality. "There isn't." After hanging up, Bryant received an alert from his monitoring system. Someone had attempted to access his old email accounts and financial records, the source traced back to Frost's private server. Bryant smiled coldly. Even facing complete ruin, Frost was still searching for leverage, still believing he could outsmart the man he had so grievously underestimated. "Time for the endgame," Bryant murmured, opening his secure messaging system to activate the final phase of Project. Bryant's immediate attention overseas. In truth, Bryant had moved to a secure compound outside Seattle where Project Nemesis entered its final implementation stage. From this fortified location, surrounded by his elite team, he prepared to unveil the full power of Prometheus. Not just as a revolutionary financial technology, but as an instrument of perfect, inescapable justice. The disappearance coincided with rumors in financial circles of an imminent major announcement about Prometheus's creator. The cryptocurrency's value surged in anticipation, crossing the threshold that would officially make its anonymous developer a billionaire. 100 days after the divorce, a simple press release from Promethean Systems announced the developer, known as Prometheus, will address the World Economic Technology Summit via secure video link. On Thursday, the countdown to revelation had begun. Chapter 6, the unveiling. The World Economic Technology Summit in Davos attracted the global financial elite, CEOs, central bankers, and technology visionaries gathered in the Swiss Alpine resort to discuss the future of money. The unscheduled announcement of Prometheus's creator's appearance sent shockwaves through the conference in a Boston apartment. Dorian Frost and Meredith Novick watched the live stream. Their once luxurious surroundings replaced by rented furniture. Frost had aged visibly in the months since the divorce debacle, his confident demeanor replaced by nervous agitation. "This could be our chance," he muttered, pouring his third scotch of the morning. "If we can prove connection to your ex-husband's work." Meredith's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Watch carefully." Her blood ran cold. "Dorian, I think Bryant is behind this announcement." On stage in Davos, the moderator addressed the packed auditorium. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to present a secure transmission from the creator of the Prometheus protocol, whose identity has remained the financial world's greatest mystery." The massive screen illuminated, showing not a face, but the Prometheus symbol, a stylized figure holding digital fire. A digitally new financial fire can illuminate what has long remained hidden. The voice explained how Prometheus wasn't merely a transaction protocol, but a sophisticated system capable of tracing and verifying financial movements through seemingly impenetrable shells and privacy structures. To demonstrate, I've selected a case study involving systematic intellectual property theft and financial fraud. The screen changed to display familiar faces: Dorian Frost and several Chinese investors at a meeting dated 3 weeks before Bryant's divorce. "Oh God," Meredith whispered, watching. In horror, documents appeared showing Frost had received $36 million from Chinese state-backed funds in exchange for technology he didn't own. Bank records revealed how he'd moved the money through 17 jurisdictions traditionally considered financial black holes. The voice continued implacably, "Prometheus can follow these transactions precisely, revealing how these funds were used to bribe patent officials, manipulate court proceedings, and attempt to steal intellectual property developed by others." In Boston, Frost lunged for his phone. "We need to leave now. If the feds see this." The apartment door crashed open as federal agents swarmed in, weapons drawn. "Dorian Frost, you're under arrest for wire fraud, intellectual property theft, and violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act." As Frost was handcuffed, an agent approached Meredith Novick. "We have some questions about your involvement in Mr. Frost's activities." In Davos, the presentation continued, meticulously documenting how Prometheus had tracked complex financial crimes previously considered untraceable. Banking executives shifted uncomfortably as the system demonstrated capabilities that rendered traditional financial secrecy obsolete. Near the conclusion, the digitally altered voice made an announcement that sent cryptocurrency markets into frenzy. "Today, I'm transferring control of the Prometheus Foundation to a consortium of international universities. My personal holdings, valued at approximately $5.60, $6 billion, will fund research into ethical Implementations of this technology. The screen shifted to show the Foundation's inaugural board of directors, distinguished cryptographers, ethicists, and economists. Among them was Dr. Franklin Webb, listed as acting director. As global media exploded with the news, Bryant Novick sat in his Seattle compound watching Mull. To unprecedented values, a secure phone rang. Franklin, it's working perfectly, the professor reported. The Justice Department is already requesting access to Prometheus for their financial crimes division. They'll have it, Bryant replied, with specific limitations. The board position was unexpected. Franklin noted, I assume you have your reasons. Someone I trust needs to guard against misuse. Bryant explained, power corrupts, even digital power. After hanging up, Bryant opened his laptop to check one final operation: the complete financial destruction of those who had betrayed him. Frost's assets were now frozen by federal authorities. The Chinese investors faced their own government's wrath for a failed operation, and Meredith Bryant had been more surgical with her rather than criminal charges. He'd ensured complete financial ruin. Her credit was destroyed, her reputation in tatters, her expensive tastes now impossible to maintain. The house she'd fought for in the divorce was underwater in debt, and the cushy alimony payments she'd expected were legally voided by her documented affair and involvement in Frost's schemes. The revenge Bryant had crafted wasn't merely about punishment, it was about irreversible consequence. There would be no recovery for Frost or Meredith, no second chances, no redemption narrative. They had tried to destroy him, and had instead destroyed themselves. Bryant's phone lit up with a familiar number. Meredith again, the first of what would become 78 increasingly desperate calls. Over the next week, he declined without hesitation. As he packed a suitcase, tomorrow he and Abby would move. Bryant had no interest in the trappings of wealth that had so obsessed Meredith. That evening, as news channels around the world reported on the crypto-billionaire divorce connection, Bryant sat with Abby watching the sunset over the Seattle skyline and asked, is it over now? Bryant and Abby had moved into their new home, which was a modest but comfortable lakeside property that had been chosen for its security rather than its ostentation. She inquired in a manner that was always insightful. The difficult part is, Bryant acknowledged while placing his arm around her shoulders. Mom called my school today, Abby stated in a hushed voice. She was disappointed. Crying and inquiring about me. Bryant carefully pondered his response. The cruelty that had led him to seek retribution did not extend to poisoning his daughter against her mother, despite everything that had happened. Your mother made terrible choices, he replied finally, but she does love you in her way. Can I see her sometimes? If you want to, Bryant responded, that is your choice to make. What about you? Bryant asked. When Abby questioned, will you ever forgive her? Bryant looked out at the darkening sky, his expression hardening. No, Abby, some betrayals don't get forgiveness. The media never connected Bryant Novick to the Prometheus protocol. As far as the world knew, the brilliant developer remained anonymous, his identity one of the great mysteries of the financial world. Only his small circle, Franklin Webb, Bryant's core development team, and eventually Abby, when she was old enough to understand, knew the truth that the man who had revolutionized global finance had done so partly to create the perfect vehicle for justice against those who had betrayed him. Injustice in Bryant Novick's world came without mercy. Chapter 7: The Reckoning. Recent divorce, single dad become crypto billionaire. The headline splashed across financial news sites worldwide exactly 1 week after the Davos revelation. While the article didn't name Bryant specifically, the timing and circumstances left little doubt for those involved. Meredith had called Bryant 78 times in those 7 days, each call declined without comment. The Prometheus Foundation opened headquarters in Cambridge, Massachusetts, with Dr. Franklin Webb guiding its integration into legitimate financial systems. Meanwhile, federal prosecutors built what they called airtight cases against Frost and his co-conspirators using evidence provided through the Prometheus system. 6 months after the divorce, Bryant and Abby settled into their new routine in a Seattle suburb. Their home, modern but understated, sat on 5 secure acres beside a private lake. Bryant worked remotely as a blockchain consultant, his connection to Prometheus known to only a trusted few. Dad, someone's here to see you, Abby called one Saturday morning. She says she's your ex-wife. Bryant found Meredith standing in their entryway, significantly changed from the polished socialite who had orchestrated his humiliation. Her designer clothes had been replaced by off-the-rack basics, her perfect highlights grown out, her confident posture diminished. How did you find us? Bryant asked coldly. I hired a private investigator, she admitted. It took most of my remaining money. You shouldn't be here, Bryant said, ushering her outside where Abby couldn't overhear. Our communication goes through attorneys. They've frozen all Dorian's assets, Meredith said desperately. I have nothing. The house is in foreclosure, my credit is destroyed, and no one in our old circle will speak to me. Consequences, Bryant replied simply. I know you're behind Prometheus. She pressed the timing, the technology. It can't be coincidence. Bryant's expression remained impassive. You should leave. I made a terrible mistake, Meredith pleaded, tears forming. I was frustrated, impatient. Dorian manipulated me with promises. Stop, Bryant interrupted sharply. You weren't manipulated, you were greedy and disloyal, you used our daughter in your schemes. I still love you, she whispered. Something flashed in Bryant's eyes, not compassion but disgust. Is that what this is about? You've lost your rich boyfriend, your lifestyle, so now you love me again now that I have what you always wanted? It's not like that, she protested weakly. You blindfolded me and led me to a divorce lawyer on Father's Day, Bryant reminded her, his voice dangerously controlled. You conspired to steal everything I'd built. You chose Frost over your family. There is no coming back from that, not ever. Meredith's desperation turned to anger. You cold bastard, you engineered all of this. Dorian's arrest, my financial ruin. For revenge? No, Bryant corrected. I simply built something revolutionary while protecting what was mine. What happened to you and Frost was your own doing. After Meredith left, Bryant found Abby waiting inside, clearly having overheard parts of the conversation. Mom looked really sad, she observed. She is sad, Bryant acknowledged. Sometimes people make choices that lead to sadness, like choosing the wrong person, Abby asked with unsettling perception. Yes, Bryant confirmed. Disturbing news. Frost made bail this afternoon. His legal team claimed prosecutorial misconduct. How? Bryant demanded. The evidence is irrefutable. They're arguing the Prometheus tracking violated privacy laws, Franklin explained. It's tenuous, but it bought him temporary freedom. I'm more concerned about his mental state. He was overheard making threats against you specifically. Bryant intensified security measures at their home, but refused to disrupt Abby's routine. We don't live in fear, he told his security chief. We prepare and remain vigilant. 3 days later, Bryant received an encrypted message from an anonymous source. Surveillance photos of him and Abby at her school, at grocery stores, at her soccer practice. The message contained one line: You took everything from me, now we're even. Bryant immediately moved Abby to their secured lake house. While he implemented a counter-surveillance operation using Prometheus's capabilities, he tracked the digital footprint of the threat to a motel outside Seattle where Frost had checked in under a false name. Rather than involving authorities, Bryant visited the motel himself with 2 private security contractors, former Special Forces operators who now worked for Promethean Systems. The confrontation in room 114 was brief but definitive. Frost, unshaven and clearly unhinged, reached for a weapon but was quickly subdued. You ruined me, Frost spat as he was pinned to the floor. Everything I built gone. You built nothing, Bryant replied coldly. You're a thief who finally stole from someone who could fight back. Bryant confiscated Frost's laptop, which contained not only the surveillance photos but detailed plans to kidnap Abby for ransom. The evidence was anonymously delivered to the U.S. Marshal Service, resulting in Frost's bail being revoked and additional charges filed 2 weeks. After some time had passed, federal prosecutors approached Bryant through intermediaries in order to obtain his testimony in their expanding case against Frost's network. Bryant agreed to fully cooperate, but only under the condition that he remain completely anonymous for the next month. Bryant provided his testimony through a secure video link, and his identity was protected by a court order. The evidence that Bryant provided expanded the scope of the investigation beyond Frost to include corrupt patent officials, compromised judges, and Chinese military intelligence officers who had supported the theft of technology. Revealed something even more disturbing. Meredith's involvement had been deeper than initially apparent. Email records showed she had been feeding Frost information about Bryant's work for nearly a year before the divorce, motivated not just by the affair but by promised millions when Prometheus was stolen and commercialized. When confronted with this evidence, Meredith accepted a plea deal to testify against Frost, receiving immunity from prosecution in exchange for complete cooperation. She chose self-preservation. Again, Franklin observed when Bryant shared this development. Are you surprised? Not in the slightest, Bryant replied. Loyalty was never her strong suit. The federal case expanded to include national security implications as prosecutors argued that Frost's attempted theft of Prometheus technology constituted economic espionage backed by a foreign power. Meanwhile, the legitimate Prometheus protocol continued its extraordinary growth under the Foundation's guidance. It was adopted by major financial institutions worldwide, revolutionizing everything from international wire transfers to micropayments. Bryant's initial vision, a transparent yet secure system that democratized financial access, was being realized beyond even his ambitious expectations. 9 months after the divorce, Bryant received a formal letter from the Senate Banking Committee requesting the creator of Prometheus testify regarding its implications for financial regulation. Through Franklin, Bryant declined. The technology speaks for itself. His official response stated its creator's identity is irrelevant to policy considerations. In truth, Bryant had no interest in public recognition. His focus remained on 2 priorities: raising Abby in a stable, secure environment and ensuring Prometheus fulfilled its potential without being corrupted by political or corporate interests. 1 year after the Father's Day betrayal, Bryant sat on his lakeside deck watching Abby swim with friends from her new school. His phone vibrated with breaking news: Dorian Frost had been sentenced to 27 years in federal prison. For fraud, economic espionage conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping, there was no satisfaction in the news, only a sense of completion. The man who had plotted to steal his life's work, who had corrupted his wife, and threatened his daughter, was facing justice. Later that evening, Abby found Bryant working in his home office. "Dad, are we rich?" she asked, bluntly, sitting on the edge of his desk. "Tommy says his dad thinks you're secretly a billionaire." Bryant closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. "What do you think?" "I think we live in a nice house, but not a mansion," she reasoned. "I don't have a pony or a private jet, so either we're not rich or you're weird about money." Bryant laughed, a genuine sound that had become more common recently. "Maybe both are true. Money is just a tool, Abby. It can't make you happy by itself. But you did create Prometheus, right?" She pressed the thing everyone's talking about. "What makes you think that Uncle Franklin has a Prometheus Foundation coffee mug?" she explained. "And you always get this look when it's on the news, like you're trying not to smile." Bryant studied his perceptive daughter. At 10, she'd already endured more upheaval than most children, yet had emerged resilient and insightful. "If I did create it," he said carefully, "it would need to remain a secret. Some secrets protect the people we love." Abby nodded solemnly. "Like how we don't tell people where we live or what you really do." "Exactly like that." That night, Bryant received an email from Meredith, her first written communication since their confrontation months earlier. The message was brief. "I'm leaving for a fresh start overseas. Please tell Abby I'm sorry for everything. I won't contact you again." Bryant didn't respond. Some chapters needed to stay closed. The next day brought news that would accelerate B. Specialized Financial Crimes Unit dedicated to using Prometheus technology to track previously untraceable transactions. They're requesting direct technical support from the Foundation. Franklin reported, "This is what you've been waiting for. Implement Phase 3. Bryant instructed. It's time. Phase 3 represented the culmination of Bryant's vision for Prometheus, not merely as a cryptocurrency or transaction protocol, but as an instrument of fundamental change in how economic power functioned worldwide. The blindfold had been lifted, not only from Bryant's perspective, but also from the perspective of the global financial system itself. The darkness that had once been a breeding ground for theft and corruption was now illuminated by the fire that he had created. Just like the mythical figure whose name he had borrowed, Bryant Novick had stolen fire from the gods of finance and given it to humanity, fully aware of the personal cost that such defiance would demand. He had paid that price willingly, and unlike those who had betrayed him, he had emerged not only unharmed but also transformed. Chapter 8. The Illumination. 18 months after the divorce, the Prometheus Protocol had fundamentally altered the global financial landscape. Traditional tax havens struggled to justify their existence when Prometheus was able to track money through previously impenetrable structures. Corruption networks discovered that their once secret financial pipelines were exposed to authorities using the technology. Bryant watched this transformation with quiet satisfaction from his carefully guarded privacy. Meanwhile, speculation about the creator of Prometheus continued in the financial media. Bryant's privacy was protected. Identity remained protected by an extensive security apparatus and legal firewalls. The International Monetary Fund is implementing Prometheus for cross-border transaction monitoring. Franklin reported during his monthly visit to the Seattle compound. "They're calling it the most significant advancement in financial transparency since the creation of modern banking and the resistance." The question was posed by Bryant, who was aware that the disruptive force of the protocol had resulted in the creation of powerful adversaries, which Franklin verified when the Swiss banks accepted. Last quarter, the remaining holdouts were unsuccessful in their primary argument against implementation. What neither of them discussed openly was the secondary system that Bryant had developed alongside the public Prometheus protocol. This system was a private monitoring network that provided him with unprecedented visibility into global financial movements, including those of the people who had betrayed him. Bryant tracked the aftermath of his revenge with clinical detachment. Frost's legal appeals had been denied, and his remaining assets had been seized by the government agencies. The Chinese investors who had backed him faced their own government's retribution for a failed operation. Meredith had indeed left the country using her immunity deal to avoid prosecution, but finding herself essentially stateless, unwelcome in financial circles globally due to her association with Frost crimes. Bryant's monitoring showed her working as an English teacher in Southeast Asia, her glamorous former life replaced by modest subsistence. The completeness of this reversal should have brought satisfaction, but Bryant found only a hollow emptiness when he considered his ex-wife's fate. The love he had once felt had been completely excised, replaced not with hatred, but with something perhaps more final: absolute indifference. His focus remained firmly on Abby and on guiding Prometheus's evolution from behind the scenes. Now 11, Abby had blossomed in their new life, excelling academically and showing particular aptitude for mathematics and computer science. Like father, like daughter, Franklin observed after Abby showed him an algorithm she'd developed for her. Science Project Bryant's life had found a new equilibrium structured around Abby's school schedule, his remote work guiding Prometheus development, and the quiet security of their lakeside home. He dated occasionally, always carefully vetted women who never learned the full extent of his work or wealth. You deserve happiness, too, Franklin told him during one of their chess matches, not just success. Bryant moved his knight with deliberate precision. I am happy I have Abby, meaningful work and peace, that's more than most achieve. The conversation 54:33 was interrupted by an urgent call from Bryant's security chief. Unauthorized individuals had been detected surveilling the perimeter of their property. Government Bryant asked tersely. Negative, the security chief replied. Initial assessment suggests private operators, professional, but not agency trained. Bryant immediately initiated their security protocol, with Abby brought to the house's secure core while surveillance drones deployed to identify the intruders. The thermal imaging showed 3 individuals in tactical positions around the perimeter of the property. Rather than calling the local authorities, Bryant activated his private security team, which consisted of former intelligence operatives who had protected key Prometheus personnel. Within 20 minutes, the intruders had been captured and secured in a boathouse located on the edge of the property. Their equipment and communications suggested that they were involved in a sophisticated private intelligence operation. Who hired you? After weighing his choices, the squad commander responded. Bryant demanded that we stand before the men who were restrained. We don't know. Cut out protocol payment through anonymous cryptocurrency. Ironic, Bryant noted. Coldly check their equipment for any non-standard modifications. A thorough search revealed specialized surveillance technology with components traced to a defense contractor with Chinese military connections, the same group that had backed Frost's attempted theft of Prometheus. They never stopped looking for you, Franklin realized when Bryant shared this information. The Chinese government still wants the creator of Prometheus. They won't find him, Bryant replied with quiet confidence, but this means we accelerate the contingency plan. The contingency had been prepared since Prometheus first launched. A complete legal and digital separation between Bryant Novick and his creation through a complex series of transactions and legal structures. Ownership of the Prometheus protocol was irrevocably transferred to the non-profit foundation, with Bryant's contribution anonymized through multiple layers of protection. Even if his identity was discovered, no one could prove he had. He either built Prometheus or laid claim to the technology, and his personal fortune, which was substantial but purposefully maintained below levels that would attract attention, was similarly shielded through trusts and legal structures that were designed to withstand any examination. What about Abby? A full security audit of Abby's digital footprint, enhanced physical security at her school, and contingency relocation plans were among the additional precautions that Bryant took. These precautions included a full security audit of Abby's digital footprint, enhanced physical security at her school, and contingency relocation plans in the event that their current residence was compromised. 2 days after the security breach, Bryant received an encrypted message from an unexpected source. The message was from Roland Pierce, a former colleague from Silverstream Technologies who now worked for the National Security Agency Cyber Command. The message was urgent and concerned your former wife and the Defense Department. The meeting took place at a secure NSA facility outside of Seattle. Showing the stress of his high-pressure position, briefed Bryant on a disturbing development. Frost has been communicating with Chinese intelligence from prison. Pierce explained, spreading surveillance transcripts across the table. He's offering something called Prometheus Zero, claiming it's the original prototype you developed before the public version. Bryant's expression remained neutral, though internally he processed this new threat. Prometheus Zero doesn't exist, we know that, Pierce confirmed, but the Chinese are interested enough to have arranged a reduced sentence for Frost through back channels. He's being released to house arrest next month, officially for health reasons and Meredith's involvement. She returned to the U.S. last week, Pierce said, sliding across surveillance photos showing Meredith at Los Angeles International Airport. Our intelligence suggests she's the proposed intermediary for whatever Frost is planning to sell. Why tell me this? Brian asked directly. What does the NSA want? Pierce leaned forward. Officially nothing. This meeting never happened. Unofficially, we need to know if there's any validity to Frost's claims. Could he have accessed early versions of your work that might be valuable to foreign actors? Brian considered the question carefully before answering no, but he's desperate enough to construct an elaborate fiction. That's our assessment as well. P.S. nodded. However, the threat to you and your daughter is very real. Frost blames you for everything, and he'll soon have considerably more freedom of movement. After the meeting, Bryant initiated the final security technique that he had hoped would never be used. Complete digital and physical dissociation within 48 hours, and he and Abby would relocate to a prepared fallback position where it would be impossible to connect to Bryant Novick or Prometheus. Is this like witness protection? Before leaving, Bryant made one last arrangement through secure channels, which was a comprehensive intelligence package that was delivered to federal prosecutors. Abby asked as they packed essential items, "Similar but better," and Brian explained, "We're not running away, we're disappearing on our terms with our resources intact." Detailing Frost's ongoing criminal activities and his connection to foreign intelligence services. "Will this be enough to stop him?" Franklin asked when Bryant shared the plan. "No," Bryant replied honestly, "but it will distract him long enough for us to implement the final solution." The final solution wasn't merely escape or protection, it was the complete neutralization of the threat. Frost represented Brian had spent months developing a specialized application of Prometheus technology designed to track and expose every digital and financial action Frost took upon his release 26 months after the Father's Day betrayal. Dorian Frost emerged from federal prison, ostensibly for medical treatment under house arrest. That same day Bryant and Abby Novick disappeared completely from their Seattle compound, leaving no digital or physical trace of their destination. What remained behind was an automated system monitoring every aspect of Frost's communication, movement and financial activity, a digital panopticon from which he couldn't escape. 3 days after Frost's release, he met with Frost. Insisted that we just need to deliver something convincing enough to get payment up front. Meredith reminded him that it was always a bluff to get you out. Frost countered by saying that we create convincing documentation, deliver encrypted files that appear legitimate, and disappear. This conversation took place at a hotel in Portland that was not particularly noteworthy. Bryant's surveillance system captured the conversation, which revealed the desperation that was driving both of them. The Chinese are willing to pay $20 million for even a partial Prometheus code. Frost promised new identities and new lives in a country that does not require extradition. Bryant. Meredith asked, "He'll know instantly what we've done. By then we'll be beyond his reach." Frost promised new identities and new lives in a country that does not require extradition. However, neither of them realized that their entire conversation was being routed through servers controlled by Bryant's system. Every word was parsed and analyzed, and every plan was countered before it could be implemented. When Frost contacted his Chinese handlers, the communication was subtly altered, and the meeting location was changed. The verification protocols manipulated. When he attempted to create false Prometheus documentation, invisible markers were inserted identifying the fraud from a secured location thousands of miles away. Bryant watched this digital chess game unfold, always 3 moves ahead of his opponents. "Is this revenge or justice?" Franklin asked during one of their secure calls. At this point Bryant replied, "The distinction is academic, it's survival." 30 days after Frost's release, he and Meredith traveled to Macau for their scheduled meeting. Bryant received confirmation through intelligence channels that both Frost and Meredith had been charged with fraud, attempted espionage, and crimes against the Chinese economic system. These charges typically result in lengthy prison sentences. Instead of meeting with Chinese technology ministers, they were met by internal security agents who had received comprehensive evidence of Frost's attempt to defraud the Chinese government. Within hours, both Frost and Meredith had vanished into China's opaque detention system, making it impossible for American authorities or legal representation to locate them. Sentences at remote prison facilities. "It's over," Franklin said when the news was confirmed. "They can never threaten you or Abby again." Bryant's response was characteristically measured. It was always going to end this way for them. People who survive by betrayal eventually run out of trust to exploit. 3 months later in a villa overlooking the Mediterranean, Bryant watched Abby swimming in their private cove. Their new identities were flawless, their security comprehensive, but unobtrusive. The fortune Bryant had accumulated remained accessible through structures that are impossible to trace to either his former or current identity. As the architect of a financial revolution, he could have claimed public recognition and the agitation that would have accompanied it. Instead, he had chosen this quiet exile, protective of the peace he had carved out of chaos. That evening, as they watched the sunset from their terrace, Abby asked the question that had been forming in her mind for weeks: "Are we ever going to return to our real lives?" Brian gave careful consideration to the question, and he reflected on the fact that this is our real life now. People we were before exist only in memories. "What about Mom?" Abby asked. "Will we ever know what happened to her?" Bryant had shielded Abby from the full truth about her mother's fate, telling her only that Meredith had chosen to follow Frost overseas. "Your mother made choices that took her beyond our reach," he said finally. "Some people can't escape the consequences of their actions." "Did you love her once?" Abby pressed, showing the perceptiveness that sometimes startled even Bryant. "Very much," he admitted. "But people change, or perhaps show their true selves eventually." "Will you ever forgive her?" Abby asked, echoing a question she had asked years earlier. Bryant's answer remained unchanged, his voice carrying the same resolute finality. "No, Abby, some betrayals don't get forgiveness." The Mediterranean sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples as they sat in companionable silence. Bryant had lost much: his name, his home, the public recognition for his creation, but he had protected what mattered most: his daughter and the revolutionary technology that would continue transforming the world long after the names Bryant Novick, Meredith Lancaster, and Dorian Frost had been forgotten. The fire that he had stolen from the gods now burned brightly across the global financial system, illuminating darknesses that had previously seemed impenetrable. Just like the mythological figure whose name he had borrowed, he had accepted exile as the price for his defiance of the established order. However, unlike Prometheus, Bryant had escaped the eagles that were sent to devour him. He had turned their hunger against them, ensuring that those who followed him would be unable to consume him. Who had attempted to destroy him were themselves destroyed. It was not forgiveness, it was not mercy, it was perfect, inescapable justice, cold as code and absolute as mathematics. Chapter 9. The Phoenix. 5 years after the betrayal had occurred on Father's Day, Bryant sat at his desk in their villa study, reviewing the most recent report from the Prometheus Foundation. The protocol now processed over 60% of all global financial transactions. Its security and efficiency standards had become the industry benchmark. At the age of 16, Abby had developed into a brilliant young woman. With her father's analytical mind and a compassion he sometimes envied, currently attending an elite international school under their new identity, she was already receiving interest from prestigious universities worldwide. "Someone sent you a package," Abby announced, entering with a small courier envelope. "Biometric verification required." Bryant scanned his thumb on the encoded lock. Immediately alert: few people knew their location, and fewer still had access to such secure delivery methods. Inside was a single USB drive, and a handwritten note from Franklin. "Thought you should know contingency measures advised." The drive contained news reports and classified intelligence about Dorian Frost's death in a Chinese detention facility, officially from natural causes, though the circumstances suggested 3 years her current whereabouts unknown. Problem? Abby asked, noting her father's focused concentration. "Nothing immediate," Bryant replied, "already implementing additional security protocols through his encrypted system. Just a loose, and that needs monitoring." 3 days later, Bryant received an alert that someone had attempted to access an old email account he'd maintained as a honeypot, a digital tripwire designed to detect anyone searching for Bryant Novick. The access originated from Monaco, less than 100 miles from their location. In addition, Bryant's current whereabouts are unknown. Mediterranean villa. Coincidence? Franklin asked during their weekly secure call. "There are no coincidences in my world," Bryant replied. "Implement Shadow Protocol 7. The protocol deployed a sophisticated digital countermeasure. False information strategically placed to suggest Bryant had relocated to New Zealand years earlier. Meanwhile, enhanced physical security discreetly surrounded their Mediterranean compound. 2 weeks passed without incident, leading Bryant to consider whether the threat had been neutralized or diverted. Then, during a routine security sweep, his team discovered a sophisticated listening device hidden in Abby's private sailboat, her 16th birthday gift, that she kept moored in the local marina. The discovery triggered immediate evacuation to their secondary safe house in the mountains. As Bryant's security team swept their villa for additional surveillance, he debated the most effective response to this invasion of their sanctuary. "We should just disappear again," Abby suggested. As they settled into the mountain chalet, "We've done it before," Bryant studied his daughter's calm resilience with pride. "Running worked when you were younger, but you deserve stability now. Friend, school, a normal life." "Normal left the building when I was 9, Abby pointed out with a smile so reminiscent of her mother that it momentarily caught Bryant off guard. That evening, Bryant's secure phone rang with an unfamiliar number. After verification protocols, he answered to hear a voice he hadn't expected. "Hello, Bryant," Meredith said softly. "It's been a long time." Bryant signaled his security team to trace the call while maintaining conversation. "How did you find us?" "With great difficulty," she admitted. 5 years in a Chinese prison gives you perspective on what matters." "I needed to see Abby." "That's not possible," Bryant replied flatly. "I've changed." "Meredith insisted the woman who betrayed you died in that prison. I just want to apologize to our daughter. Your surveillance devices suggest otherwise." Bryant countered. "The listening equipment on her boat wasn't placed by someone seeking reconciliation." A pause. "That or reconciliation, those possibilities had died years ago in a lawyer's office on Father's Day. Instead, he provided something more practical: security arrangements that would protect Meredith from the remaining elements of Frost's network while maintaining controlled contact with Abby. This isn't redemption," he made clear. "It's pragmatism. Abby wants this connection, so I'll facilitate it within secure parameters." "I understand." Meredith nodded. "I don't deserve forgiveness, I'm just grateful for any role in her life, however limited." After they had finished talking, Meredith asked one last question. "Is it worth it to create something revolutionary when you know that it would cost you your identity and your normal life?" Bryant thought about the profound transformation of his existence, which went from being an ambitious developer to a betrayed husband to an invisible architect of a financial revolution. He answered that it wasn't a choice. "Finally, Prometheus needed to exist, and I was equipped to create it. The cost was high, but the alternative was to surrender. 1 month later, Bryant stood on the terrace of their home. Mediterranean villa watching Abby skillfully navigate her sailboat across the bay. The threat from Frost's network had been permanently neutralized, their security reconfigured to allow measured freedom, while maintaining protection. Franklin joined him, having flown in for their quarterly strategy session on Prometheus's ongoing evolution. The Foundation is proposing a new implementation focusing on climate finance tracking. Franklin reported the protocol's ability to verify carbon offset transactions could revolutionize environmental markets. Bryant nodded approvingly. Implemented, that's exactly the kind of application I envisioned. And the personal side? Franklin asked carefully. How's Abby handling reconnecting with Meredith? Better than expected, Bryant acknowledged. She's mature enough to understand complex motivations and set her own boundaries. And you any second thoughts about allowing Meredith back into your orbit? Bryant shook his head decisively. She's in Abby's orbit, not mine. I'll never trust her again, never. Forgive the betrayal, but Abby deserves the chance to make her own judgments. As the Mediterranean sun set behind them, Bryant reflected on the path that had brought him here. The blindfold that had once symbolized his deception had ultimately revealed a harsh truth. Loyalty couldn't be assumed, only proven through adversity. The Bryant Novick, who had been ambushed on Father's Day years earlier, no longer existed, destroyed as thoroughly as his betrayers had intended, though not in the way they had planned. In his place stood someone stronger, more resolute, and ultimately more effective. A man who had created a technology that changed the world while ensuring those who had betrayed him face the inescapable consequences of their actions. There was a certain symmetry to the outcome. The blindfold had been meant to lead him to destruction, but had instead forced him to see with perfect clarity. The divorce papers designed to strip him of everything had liberated him to build something revolutionary, and the betrayal that should have broken him had instead forged him into something. His enemies had fatally underestimated a man who would never again be blindsided by deception, never again offer trust without absolute verification, and never under any circumstances forgive those who had betrayed him. It wasn't a happy ending in the conventional sense, but it was just as cold, complete, and inescapable, just like Prometheus itself. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you